Here's an old guy story for you. I remember in second grade, we had this awesome discussion about the future. In fact, I'm 50 years old now, and I still remember this because it was so exciting. Our teacher showed us the bottom of a cereal box. And by the way, how many discussions do you have about the future that begin with the bottom of a cereal box? Not many. So this is rare radio right here. Mrs. Wright said, she was our second grade teacher, "Do you know what this is?" And we had no clue. There was just this box drawn on the bottom of the box with a bunch of little black bars. And she said, "That's a UPC code." And of course, we're in second grade. So what happens? Though there was no official phrase, then second graders gave her the equivalent of the, who cares? And she said, no, this is the future. Soon we're going to have these checkout aisles where there doesn't have to be a clerk punching in your order. And I remember when I was a kid, all of these, these fast-fingered, usually they were women, fast-fingered women that could fly on the cash register, putting in one thing after another thing after another. Don't you love my old guy story? But she said that's not going to happen anymore. You're going to run them across a laser, and that laser is going to read the code. And not just me, but 26 second graders sat back at their desk, wide-eyed. There's no way in hell. A laser? And you're going to run your stuff across that, and it's going to figure out how much your cereal costs? There's no way. Better yet, she said, you're not even going to pay with money. You're going to have this credit card looking thing, and it is your bank information on it, and everybody's going to pay with one of those. And instead of running a credit card across one of those carbon copy imprint where they take your card and they run this carbon of it, and then you had to sign and all this work, you'd swipe it into this machine, and money right then will automatically leave your bank account. And all of us were on pins and needles. We're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. And now it's so boring, isn't it? The future isn't nearly as cool as we thought it was, is it? And maybe it's going to be the same way in the future with our money. Live from the 3-room apartment above Uncle Jack's garage, it's the Money in the Morning Show. Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter. And today, we've got a tale of two, not one, but two headlines ripped from the press. Today, we're talking about the future of your money. We're talking about advisors and financial advisory jokes. So that's going to be good. You get a bunch of financial planners in a room and have them tell jokes. Hilarity ensues, I'm sure. That's coming up on today, plus a big idea at the end. But today's show is brought to you by Lemonade. Thanks to Lemonade for supporting Stacky Benjamins. Get Lemonade renter's insurance in seconds, even their homeowner's insurance, by heading to stackybenjamins.com/lemonade. Zero paperwork, zero brokers. Couldn't be easier or faster. That's stackybenjamins.com/lemonade. Thanks again to them. Thanks to you for hanging out with us. We're going to make it well worth your time, I hope. So, Laura, why don't you get this party started, huh?
Just when you thought the show couldn't possibly get better, it's time for your headlines.
I think out of all Laura's opens, that's my favorite one. Because we haven't even started the show, and she says, as if it couldn't get better. It can't. How could it possibly get better? We did the open. Like it's all downhill from here, isn't it? But wait, there's more. First headline comes to us from Fast Company today. This one's written by Marius Robles. It's the year 2038. Here's how we'll eat 20 years in the future. Have you ever thought about that? Like 20 years in the future, how are we going to eat then? I don't know. Maybe we haven't thought about it. Maybe you're like, Joe, who cares? That's 20 years in the future. I just find that fascinating. How the heck are we going to get our protein in the future? Well, let's read. It's the year 2038. The word flavor has fallen into disuse. Sugar's the new cigarette. We've managed to replace salt with healthy plants. We live in a society in which we eat fruit grown using genetics. We drink synthetic wine, scrambled eggs that don't come from chickens. We grill meat that wasn't taken from animals and roast fish that never saw the sea. Was this what we had in mind when we started seeking transparency, traceability, and sustainability of our food system many years ago in the early aughts? I love this time right now being called the early aughts. That's funny. About a decade ago, we lived through an agricultural bottleneck caused by warm temperatures that caused plagues and diseases, which severely compromised the food sources we were cultivating and consuming. By the end, 3/4 of the world's food was derived from just 12 plants and 5 animal species. We learned from this mistake and started to embrace true biodiversity, grew meat in labs, and put robotics into farms. But the technological advances that have made clean, sustainable food possible have also created some horrifying scenarios. Traditional farmers were left with no choice but to reinvent themselves, although very few had the capacity to adapt to the new kind of agriculture. Most of them were eliminated by robots. Vegetables like cauliflower, cabbage, and broccoli had seen soaring prices due to a lack of workers available to harvest them. Robots cut costs by 40%. Agriculture is now mostly in the hands of the young generation, 70% of whom are college graduates and refer to themselves as urban farmer scientists. They grow all kinds of plants in containers placed throughout cities using efficient hydroponic setups and the latest technology to narrow the gap between citizens and their food. Farms are now located in cities and can be readily visited, but they now resemble an Apple store more than a traditional farmstead. In addition to this technology, the fields that remain for cultivation became sites for regenerative agricultural practices, a series of steps beyond what's required to obtain an organic label and which could contribute to combat climate change by locking carbon into the ground. We live in an age of ultra-personalization, but at the same time, we lack any kind of privacy. All of our nutrition follows a plan. There's practically no freedom of choice. The initial trigger was China's pilot program based on the launch of its first big data and artificial intelligence system that assigned a rating to each Chinese citizen, what they called the social credit plan. Once Chinese businesses entered the food market en masse, they applied their technology and control method throughout the world. The focus on climate change and food safety led the EU to create a kind of food police. The organization uses technology and the ongoing carbon footprint left by each citizen to trace everything we eat and monitor our level of food waste. The sum of all these elements results in our CFS, Citizen Food Score. They're able to analyze everything from the sandwich we take from a vending machine, 1,441 grams of CO2 equivalent, equal to the emissions generated by driving a car for 10 miles, to our overall eating habits. This means that when you try to use your fingerprint on a vending machine, sometimes it'll withhold the product, either because it would exceed your predetermined carbon level or because you've already ingested the necessary calories for that day. You can read the rest of this at fastcompany.com. I think we'll stop there. Isn't that fascinating? Kind of depressing, isn't it? Like I started that piece and I thought, oh, this is cool. This is neat. Like the very first thing that I thought as I started reading this, and there's many thoughts that I have reading this. Number one was, take a look at food disruptors. Like what we've seen in the financial industry, and actually what we've seen across industries is that Silicon Valley and people in technology have taken aim at the backwoods and the backwaters over and over and over. And if there's an area that looks like could use some optimization, they step in and baby do they optimize. You're looking now at heavy duty optimization in the auto industry, which didn't change forever. A guy from the Motor City didn't change and could have changed a lot quicker than it did, and yet it didn't. And now it's changing very fast. And instead of being against it, Detroit has to be on the back of it. And man, are they. And that's exciting to see. We're seeing that in financial services. We've seen it in banking. And now we're seeing firms like Goldman Sachs embracing areas that they didn't even pay attention to before with savings accounts by Marcus, things like that. We're also seeing in insurance now, right? The attack on the annuity business, super exciting because that's the backwater of financial products and is absolutely horrible. And every time there's this spot, here comes technology, here comes people to fill that in. And now they're talking about this with food. So exciting to see it with food. And on the other end, they also show, though, a society that maybe has gone too far. And while I don't know about that, and that part might be science fiction-y, the piece that gets me beyond the piece that they're going to monitor my ice cream and popcorn intake, like, no, I am not voting for that future. If you're going to monitor my ice cream and my popcorn intake, I'm out. Like, take me off the grid. I will be in the backwoods with my popcorn popper, not one of those crappy air poppers either. I mean, who thought up the air popper for popcorn? This stuff's disgusting. Can't have that. But when you take a look at not just disruption, the other thing that scares me here is when I read parts of this, I don't think it's that far off. Do you? I mean, I really don't think that this is going to be something that's that science fiction-y. I mean, some parts of it, the food police part, okay, I don't think that's probably going to happen. But I do think that we are good. The way we eat's going to be different. The way we drink stuff is going to be different. And it's going to be the same with our money. And because of that, what I think is these people that work in extremes are in trouble. When I read about somebody who's 32 years old and they're retiring and they think they have things set up for the future is a lot different than you think it's going to be, buddy. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think that when we just look at the past, which sadly for a person who's 32 years old, I don't know that you can look back far enough to realize how much things are going to change. And I think that when you're betting on the future, the plan has to be a plan for change. I think that's our takeaway from the first piece. Plan for change. And that's why when you do your financial plan, by the way, you redo it and you redo it and you redo it because we just don't know. And that makes it pretty exciting. Let's say hi to our good friends hanging out with us on Facebook this fine morning. In fact, if you want to join us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/iStackBenjamins is our Facebook page. That's where we do these. And today we just showed up randomly. Sometimes we schedule them. We try to schedule them as much as we can. But if you go there, you'll get the alert that we're going live and you can hang out too. But we've got a chattery bunch here today. We've got James here who hung out with us last show. James, great that you're here. Angie's here. Daryl's here. Arnold's here. Elvia is here. Kimberly's here. Ron is here. He's walking the dog today while he's taking in the show. Ron, glad you could make it. Lori's here, thank goodness. And Daryl said, putting the price tag on the grocery items as fast as I can was the best part of my stocking job, and they took that away from me. Technology, Daryl, took that away from you. Blame those tech nerds. Lori says Mrs. Wright was tuned into the equivalent of Money in the Morning in 1975. Yes, she was, Lori. Mrs. Wright was an awesome teacher. Daryl says, skip the boring stuff and let me know how pizza's made in the future. Isn't that really the point? How come they never get to that? Like, who cares about our food and vegetables? We want to know about that. Angie said, as the piece turned, sounds like a horrible existence. Robert, disruptors make it happen. Elizabeth on eating popcorn. Lori says, I'm a country kid who grew up on a real farm, and I'll take food from a place any day where you have to take off your nasty boots when you come into the house. You know what's funny? Food from farms, still seriously, tastes so much better. Like tomatoes. Friends of ours grow tomatoes like we used to when I was growing up and lived in the country. And oh my goodness, their tomatoes versus the tomato in the store, night and day. Just amazing, the difference there. Kimberly says ice cream's a food group, isn't it? If it's not, we got to stage a riot. We got to have a time to march on Capitol Hill, Kimberly, if it isn't. Daryl says he's going to have to buy ingredients for his pizza on the dark web. How come that's not in this Fast Company piece? Seems like that's going to be the future. If we got food police, we're going to have a food dark web, won't we? That's funny. Plan on change, and you know change is going to happen. Just look at the past. Our second piece, we're going to have just a little bit of fun with this one. Not long, though. It comes to us from financial planning, and this is by Amanda Chavio. Says, advisors poke fun at fiduciary with T-shirt side hustle. You guys know what a fiduciary is? If you're new to the show, you might not. Fiduciary is somebody, a lot of people don't know this exists, but it's somebody who's a financial advisor who has to work in your best interest. So when you hire a financial advisor, if you're working with someone selling you financial products, ask them point blank, are you fiduciary? Now, people that aren't have come up with a good discussion about that. Some people have been around the block and they know how to answer that. So they will not say yes, but they will say, well, guess what? I work through this thing called suitability standards. Suitability standards mean do no harm. Fiduciary means do in your best interest. And there's a difference there. It's very easy to justify that something won't do harm, but might not be the right thing. That's suitability. Fiduciary means this is, in my heart, the right thing for you to do. but advisors poking fun at it with a t-shirt side hustle. I thought this was kind of funny. And it applies really to any job. As an advisor, you might have suggested to clients that finding a way to pick up some extra cash on the side is a great way to supplement their income. But have you ever thought of doing that yourself? Lest you think that holistic planning and diversifying portfolios won't leave you with enough time, take a page from the advisors who found a moment to turn a random idea into a business. Doug Bonaparte of Bonafide Wealth in New York City. By the way, he was on our Stacking Benjamin show with a great book for millennials that he and his spouse wrote. Back to the piece. It says, who's been featured in financial planning, and financial planning columnist Dave Grant of Retirement Matters in Cary, Illinois, teamed up a few months ago to launch an advisor-focused novelty t-shirt business. Yes, t-shirts, the piece says. The idea first occurred to Bonaparte when he was contemplating the fee-only versus fee-based issue advisors often debate, he says. Somewhere out of that came the idea of why not poke fun at the profession, he says. It was just this random zany thought. I really haven't seen too many advisor-related things ever make it onto clothing. Bonaparte reached out to his fellow advisors in a Facebook group to get some feedback on the idea and came up with the 3 t-shirts. #fiduciaryAF, whatever that means. Come at me, broker. And I do it for the BPS, which, by the way, fee-only advisors often advise people based on BPS, which is a percentage of the money that they manage. So maybe it's 0.5% or 1%, and I've seen it as high as 2%. So depending on how much it is, but I do it for the BPS is something that fee-only planners write on their shirt. Currently on sale from FAAF Apparel. Grant, who Bonaparte had never met in person before, reached out when Bonaparte asked his fellow advisors if they'd had any experience in this area. Dave comes in and says he did it in college and actually had experience doing this via dropship and could easily set it up. Bonaparte explains it was instant. You're a partner after that. Pair is able to turn the business around fairly quickly, launching the website this week after only a few months of planning. While side businesses are usually designed to pull in some extra income, Bonaparte says he doesn't expect this to be a cash cow, and he's okay with having only sold a handful of shirts so far. When your expectation's 0, one sale's a big win, he says. However, if they do sell enough shirts, Bonaparte says he'd like to use a portion of the proceeds to fund a certified financial planning exam scholarship. Quote, I'm not doing this for the money whatsoever, he says. I'd just like it to be a conversation piece to further promote the Career Lab and to do some good. I thought that was very funny. And I think it also counteracts, and this is kind of what got me here. Is I've been in a couple of forums online this week where people said, oh, all financial advisors are just people trying to line their pockets. And are you kidding me? Most people I know, it doesn't matter what profession they're in. Like when you call any one profession, when you say they're all crooks, I think you have to look again, because it's funny how many times people are crooks when you don't know them. But the second you get to know them, how few people are actually crooks, right? I mean, think about people that you hang out with, people you know. How many would you classify as crooks? Like, I could probably name 5 people where I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Person seems a little sketchy. But generally, who wakes up in the morning? Do you know anybody who wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm going to suck at my job today and I'm going to rip people off? Probably not. Probably not. And it's fun to get into your profession this way. I love the fact that these two guys are so excited about their profession that they're making t-shirts about it. And one of the most nerdy professions out there, right? Financial advisor, cracking jokes about being a fiduciary of all things. Like think about what inside baseball that humor is. Probably 90% of us listening to this don't even think it was funny. Daryl says he thought it was funny. You're on the inside, Daryl. There it is. Lori says, are those funny? Maybe that's why he's only sold a few shirts. That's it. Maybe Doug thinks they're funny. I don't know. The point is this. Whatever your profession is, I love this idea of being good at your job and loving your job and not being good at it because the client demands it and not being good at it because your manager thinks you need to be good at it or you're searching for that next 3% raise. Just be good at it because you can, because you got one life, because it's more fun to be good at your job. I love this. I remember one time going out to Fridays after just a hellish week. And I was with a bunch of financial advisors. And after a couple of foamy beverages, we'll say, we started coming up with these things that these things that clients would never want to hear you say. And oh my God, was it a funny night. It was such a funny night. Like often people they'll say, I don't know much about this. Like the one thing you can't say if you're a financial advisor is, yeah, that's two of us. Probably not. And another one was if you're telling a story and a story that goes, so just after I got bailed out, right? If your story goes that way, things clients don't want to hear their financial advisor say. Those are the only two I remember, but it was a great night. Good stuff. Lori says, maybe Doug wakes up thinking I'm going to suck at my job and rip off people. I don't even think Doug thinks that. I think Doug is 100 miles an hour, always in the wrong direction. Just some of the, wait till you hear the stuff he's got coming up for Burning Man. It's kind of ugly. So that's our takeaway from point number 2. Let's talk a little bit here about lemonade. And once we finish talking about lemonade, for those of you that missed the shows last week, I had some big news with lemonade myself. So I need renter's insurance. And I went over to Lemonade by heading to stackingbenjamins.com/lemonade. And I love it because I had been through the site, just kind of testing it out to make sure that this was a company that I actually wanted to partner with. And then I also had talked to the people who are with Lemonade, just a great group of people over there. But when it came to actually using the product, I thought it was neat because renter's insurance, I don't get a chance. Well, now that we're in the 3-room apartment over the garage, I've got to use it. And I'll tell you, when we head back to Michigan and the new basement, I'm going to make sure that Mom at least gets a quote from Lemonade. Because it's so easy. When they say it takes you 90 seconds, I'm not kidding, guys. It took 90 seconds. And number 2 was when I got my quote, I was so surprised. My first quote was $1,800. My quote through Lemonade, just over $700 a year. Big difference. Now, it might not be a big difference for you, but it takes 90 seconds. And I love this idea of using your time wisely by comparison shopping. Hey, if you can save what would you do with $1,100 if you had it? The weird thing about Lemonade is actuarially how they work. They work completely differently. Their claims coverage, which would be a whole nother podcast. Maybe we have to have them on the Friday FinTech show over at Stacking Benjamins. We really need to do that. But you can choose a charity to support. Lemonade will donate your leftover premium money to the cause once a year. Say you don't have claims, your money's left over, heads over to your favorite charity. stackingbenjamins.com/lemonade if you want to check it out. 90 seconds, and I saved $1,100. Bam. That's a big fat number. All right, let's get into this. This is the end of the show. We call this the big idea, where we take these two headlines that seem to have nothing to do with each other, and we put them together into something you can take home. Ron can take as he's finishing up his walk with the dogs. But I think the big idea here is this. When we look at the future, we really don't know what the future is going to be like. And hearing this future that sounds so different than usual, so different than the current. We're going to eat what? We're going to eat how? It's going to be technology, people? No. And yet, I remember in second grade, UPC codes and going, really? A laser? And you're going to be able to run it over a laser, and you're going to know exactly your groceries are going to be automatically added up. Like, it was amazing to me. You're going to have all your money on a little card? That's crazy. How is that going to happen? You swipe the card and your money's automatically deducted? Yeah, not as sexy as you thought it was, is it? And the future probably isn't as sexy as this Fast Company piece makes it sound. And yet, the future is going to look different than we think. There's probably a lot of stuff in this piece that are coming. And I don't know that it's 2035 or whatever year they talked about, but it's coming. And because of that, and because when we look at financial planning and this idea of fiduciary AF, like somebody who's a fiduciary is giving you great advice, but I think it has to go even further than that. because it's based in this point, based on questions that you ask. And I think a great advisor doesn't do that. I think a great advisor has to help lead you into the future. And I think that's why holistic planning, and I think this is the big idea today, holistic planning, looking at your life, not just through one single lens, but through the whole rainbow of lenses, and looking at your entire life where it all intersects, the science, the math, the English, all the different subjects that you got in school, that they're all combined and swirled around. I think that's what your life is really like. And I think that's why it isn't just about the questions you ask. I think the future is going to intersect in lots of different ways that we don't yet know. And having that open mind, which comes through, I think this holistic financial planning process is the win. That is the win. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. Hey, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today on Facebook. Another great chatty group today. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. Go stack some Benjamins. We'll see you next time back here on Money in the Morning.
Money in the Morning is created by Joe Saul-Sehy and comes to your ears because of the collective genius of our producer, Richie Rutter-Reese, engineer, Caden Thompson, and a pack of very well-trained ferrets here in the basement. You'll find links to all of our headlines featured on today's show in Joe's Twitter feed at @AverageJoeMoney. I know you already know this too, but Money in the Morning is for entertainment purposes only. You shouldn't act on anything recommended by a bunch of entertainers in a basement without first consulting with your financial advisor and second, having your head examined. Have a headline you'd like us to discuss? Send them to Joe at stackingbenjamins.com or put them on our Stacking Benjamins Basement closed Facebook group. This show is copyright 2018 Stacking Benjamins LLC, all rights reserved. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor Doug, and I reserve the right to always say, we'll see you next time back here on Money in the Morning.